I'm focused on his spirit cause it keeps me from his fire. The Holy Ghost was with me, so my fear I leave behind. My sins were all diminished when he took that breath and died. And if you think I'ma give up on my God, the devil is a lie. The devil is a lie. The devil is a lie.
Hello, welcome to Black Teen News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about some very tragic news. It's the worst thing that anyone wants to hear reported on, especially, I guess, ever when it's reported on. But as children are just beginning to go back to school, we've already got news of a mass shooting in Minnesota and Minneapolis, and it's already turning political. I hate these news stories because of one, it's just disgusting that these things happen, tragic that these things happen, how people act when covering these things, and then they kind of ditch the story when it doesn't fit their kind of political narrative. How people when these things happen in real time and so fast, and the news kind of just starts, things can happen, things are misreporting, get misreported, and so on. So there's just um so many things I just hate about these kinds of stories, but it's it happened, it's worth talking about, and I people need to come together to have real solutions for our children, for their safety. And unfortunately, a lot of people will yell gun control, a lot of people will yell do something, but they don't actually have knowledge on these topics at all. Like, I just saw a video with someone saying that these guns, that semi-automatics, you pull the trigger and they just fire all this stuff with one trigger. Is literally not what they do. um so unfortunately, a lot of people have passion, but they're not armed with information. And Steven Crowder, one thing he'll do when he would talk to people about, the change my mind stuff, on firearms and Second Amendment, he would tell people like, okay, the way to get folks to understand that how you obtain guns isn't like a real problem, is for them to actually apply to get a gun. And people realize that it's harder for them to actually obtain a firearm. So people still think like, oh well, Minnesota, that these Democrat cities and states or whatever, it's hard to get firearms there, but you can just go to a gun show in a different state and just walk right out with a firearm. That's not how it happens, that's not how it works. And it's just just tragic all the way around. Also, you have Jacob, I think it's Jacob Frey, or who's the governor, ticking off people because he's like, don't just say thoughts and prayers, because this happened literally while they were praying. um I have such a huge problem with that. um Mainly because I am a Christian. I find it disrespectful, but it's very disrespectful to those families who lost their children. Obviously, prayer and religion mean something deeply to them. You don't have to diminish people offering thoughts and praise. Like, I understand that they're saying, well, we need something more than that. Don't it, your solutions don't have to come at the expense of people's faith. So I got a lot, I guess, to kind of say as we go through the details of the story. It's all kind of fresh and new and breaking. So some of this stuff we'll see together. There's some things coming out about the killer that if is the case, I don't think the left will want to talk about it too much, because they seem like they're a radical anti-Semitic trans person, maybe. So we'll be covering that, talking about that stuff. Again, this is breaking, this is real time kind of news that's going on as folks are finding out information. And if anything is, I just want to put that caveat out there, like, or that disclaimer rather, as I'm covering this stuff, in case like something comes out and there's a detail that's wrong, that I will go ahead and correct. But I don't want to be like a spreader of misinformation, but that's just kind of the risk sometimes when you run some of these stories and you don't wait a couple days. Anyway, before we jump into everything, I encourage you guys to go to blackteeners.com, check out different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the site because it does cost the stream, run the site, all that good stuff. You guys get support. Very much appreciate you guys. You guys can check out stuff that's available, books and so on. But yeah, you guys can do all that stuff. But let's jump to the news. So let me just read some stuff going on in this Fox News article about it. Minnesota school shooting, gunman kills 2 children, injures 17 others during Catholic mass. I'm getting teary-eyed. Brian O'Hara, Minneapolis police chief, confirms 2 children aged 8 and 10. My niece and nephew are 8 and 10. Died during in the Catholic church shooting as they sat in the pews. 17 people, including 14 children, were injured in mass shooting on Wednesday. O'Hara told reporters during a conference that police believe used 3 weapons: a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. The suspect, later identified as Robin Westman and Robert Westman, took their own life. And I guess it's Robin, because he identifies as a woman, I guess. But Robert, original name. Suspect took his own life at the rear of the church. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz acknowledged the incident on X, expressing concern and offering prayers for the affected students and teachers. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem stated that the Department of Homeland Security is actively monitoring the situation. Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey is actively monitoring the situation, according to Police Chief O'Hara. And the emergency response team, ATF agents from St. Paul office responded to the active shooter situation. Noam called him a deranged monster, targeting our most vulnerable. FBI Director Kash Patel said the FBI is investigating the shooting at a Minneapolis Catholic school mass as an act of domestic terrorism and hate crime. In a post on X, FBI is investigating the shooting as an act of domestic terrorism, hate crime targeting Catholics. Patel wrote, there are 2 fatalities, an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, in addition to 14 children and 3 adults were injured. The shooter has been identified. I told you their name. I don't want to keep saying their name, but FBI will continue to provide updates on our ongoing investigation with the public if we are able. The Pope sent his condolences. He said, at this extremely difficult time, the Holy Father imparts to the Annunciation Catholic school community and the Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis and the people of the greater Twin Cities metropolitan area the apostolic blessing as a pledge of peace, fortitude, and the consolation of the Lord Jesus Christ. They got kids saying it was very scary, super scary, because like we've never practiced it in the church. We've only practiced it in the main school. So we really didn't know what to do. We just got into the pews and he shot through the stained glass windows. A 10-year-old student said, referring to the shooting drills. He also shared that he had 2 friends who were hit, one of whom he said was on top of him to make sure he was safe. Oh. Younger student said that the shooter fired through the stained glass windows. The vice president of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, Archbishop William E. Lori, issued a statement in response to the shooting. As a church, we are following the tragic news with heartbreaking sadness. Whenever one part of the body of Christ is wounded, we feel the pain as if it were our own children. Let us all beg for the Lord for protection of healing and the entire family. Gosh, Marty. Sorry. I don't know, the older I get, the kind of just more emotional I find myself, and I don't know, I think it's a particularly I don't know, death hits hard since my mom, I guess. But as a mark of President Donald Trump also said something as a mark of respect for the victims of the senseless acts of the violence perpetrated on August 27th, 2025. In Minneapolis, Minnesota, by the authority vested in me as President of the United States by the Constitution, the laws of the United States of America, I hereby order the flag of the United States shall be flown at half staff at the White House and upon all public buildings and grounds, at all military posts and naval stations, and all naval vessels and federal government in the District of Columbia throughout the United States and its territories and possessions until sunset. And so that was his directive. People offering condolences. So that's basically what this article is, just going on different people's responses to it. So let me go ahead and just play what Jacob Frey said that's kind of making the rounds right now. And I saw a clip of this on TikTok, and the comments were very political right off the bat, and I can tell you guys about some of them that I already saw.
I mean, he's expressing.
Sorry, that's Dana Bash talking about it. This is it.
I mean,
sorry, that's. I thought I saved the one with him actually just talking about it. He said I guess I didn't. I apologize. But he had said that
those families
got it. I got one. Sorry. Got it.
Are suffering immense pain right now. Think of this as if it were your own. Every one of us needs to be wrapping our arms around these families, giving them every ounce that we can muster. These were Minneapolis families. These were American families. And the amount of pain that they are suffering right now is extraordinary. And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance. These are the sort of basic assurances that every family should have, every step of the day, regardless of where they are in our country.
So, I understand the sentiment that families, they do deserve more. People do deserve more. We shouldn't be living in this world. We do live in a fallen world. People choose sin. People do awful, terrible things. People choose to break the law. People are unwell. They choose hate, and so on and so on. This is the world we live in. That doesn't mean that we can't take steps to offset these risks and the violence that might come to our children, to ourselves. And I get that he's upset, and I get that he wants stronger gun laws and all sorts of things, and people want solutions. I think when things like this happen, and they do keep happening, people try to ride the wave of the outrage and the emotions that people are feeling to insert their political motivations. But sometimes when we are informed by feelings, we throw out facts, and we decide to put out some kind of solution that maybe isn't going to do anything, that's not going to be effective, that perhaps infringes on the rights of law-abiding citizens who would like to use firearms to protect their family members or hunt or do other things with them, just use them for recreational use. People are talking about guns are deadly weapons. Yeah, they can be. You can use lots of things, baseball bats, other, knives, so on, as deadly weapons to harm someone else. Your cars. It's illegal to go and murder people. Obviously, it's illegal to go and shoot up a school or just, unless you're doing something for like purposes of self-defense. Like it's pretty much illegal to shoot somebody, guys. Unless it's warfare and there's still like laws of war, international kind of laws of warfare. You can't just take your firearm and decide to end somebody else's life. So what are we going to do? Like, what are the steps to protect the kids that are going to actually work? Because just shouting gun control, just shouting do something, that's not enough. It's performative. It's performative and I don't appreciate it. Now, maybe the goal is to just take everyone's guns. It wasn't too long ago that you had Democrats trying to make the case that we don't have a right to own private firearms. Kamala Harris signed her name off to that when they had the oh gosh, what was the name of the decision? Heller, DC versus Heller case. So we could have been close to like the wrong decision deciding like you don't get a right to own firearms. I understand that confiscation is the goal of a lot of these people. And they'll try to pretend like it's not, but it is. I do think it's rich when they don't want to prosecute criminals for violating different charges when maybe they're violating parole because they have a gun or something. Maybe it's they lied on their ATF form, like Hunter Biden. You had Joe Biden, who was trying to give his son a sweetheart deal, and at the end of the day, that blew up in his face, and he just ended up pardoning him after all these Democrats and news organization people claimed that Joe Biden wasn't going to do that. He darn well did it. So it's an issue when people break gun laws. Like if you're going to make them, and if you don't prosecute them to the fullest extent when people break them, what is the point of having them? So there's all kinds of issues as far as the laws, how they're enacted, what laws should we pass, will they actually do anything? And we need real adults having real serious conversations about policy that isn't performative and that is actually informed. And I'll show you an example of someone who's not informed. Let me just go ahead and do that now. But I do want to talk about the thoughts and prayers thing that I find to be disrespectful. I know it's not trying to be disrespectful to the families and stuff, but I find what he said to be pretty disrespectful.
It seemed like a rifle, he said, a semi-automatic rifle, and it went on for several minutes.
Right, and look, that's not uncommon as well. These things can shoot dozens of bullets, in just one trigger pull, right? And so what happens in this case is sometimes they have enough time to reload. It's one of the most horrific things for students to be.
Okay. They can fire dozens of bullets with one trigger if it's a semi-automatic. That's not how they work, because they're semi-automatic. You have to keep pulling the trigger. That's how it works. If you have a fully automatic, you can hold it down and it'll shoot. But these are semi-automatics. Handguns, AR-15s, pew, 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 pew. You can modify a firearm and try to make it shoot just with one trigger pull. But that's not how they work. And you can say, well, that's a small thing. It's really basic. It's really basic if you know it. They're far better gun experts than me who could talk about these topics. But I know he knows nothing. I know he doesn't know enough. And he's here on CNN. I didn't hear a fact check. I didn't hear a fact check. So you have people on to talk about these things, and then they spew misinformation, and it informs fear and ignorance instead of informing people on how they can actually do things to solve issues or make things safer, life safer. People will pick soft targets where they know that they can do the most damage. And that's just unfortunately true. it. Someone in the comments said kids were murdered, but sorry we didn't get the bullet firing speed right for the gun nuts. That's not the point. People are like, they made up a lie. The point is, we want informed people to actually come up with good solutions. I would like good solutions that don't infringe on the liberty of law-abiding citizens who should, like, if if you're a single woman living in a dangerous city, why shouldn't you have the right to own a firearm? The police don't have a constitutional duty to protect you. Your safety is in your hands. Your safety. I'm not saying you can't call the police. I love calling the police if I feel that I need them, and they better be there in less than 5 minutes. I will call the police. I appreciate them. Back the blue, all this stuff. Okay. But they don't always do their job. Uvalde, oh my gosh. So heartbreaking. The police like holding parents back from going and trying to protect their kids. And there were so many red flags before the Uvalde thing. It was so ridiculous. A crazy kid who had carrying a dead cat in a bag, just all kinds of stuff. I'm like, y'all didn't know that person was crazy. And people also need to, if you think someone is nuts and could possibly be a danger, you gotta look out for the signs, guys. But anyway, back to the mayor here and the thoughts and prayers thing. You don't have to give your passionate speeches, your political let's do something action speeches, while disrespecting people who believe in the power of thoughts and prayers. And to bring when they're in a church too, it just kind of sounds like you're mocking their faith doubly. Like prayers don't work. I'm not saying that you can't set your hands to certain things. I know the power of prayer works. I do. I don't have the answers for why all bad things happen. I a lot of questions, a lot of people can have about different things. I don't know why it was my mom's time to go about this time last year. We're coming up on almost here. I don't have all the answers. I don't know. And God's not going to answer all your questions. He's sovereign. He makes whatever choices that he, ultimately. But there is a person who's responsible for the death of those children who legitimately seems nuts. And I don't know if the information has come out about how he acquired all of these weapons. I don't know if somebody missed something. I don't know if they're stolen. I don't know if they're borrowed. I'm still learning those things, and I guess we'll be updated and folks will be talking about it. But here's reporting online about some of this stuff. So he had a video where he's showing off some of his firearms, and you got stuff like kill Donald Trump on his guns. Rip and tear. One of them said Israel must fall. So they don't like Trump, don't like Israel. Another said, thank God for the Breivik on it. And Anders Behring Breivik is a neo-Nazi who killed 70 people in 2011 in Norway attacks. So someone praising a neo-Nazi. And at this point in time, going through the guns and the thread, it's like, oh, this could be a crazy left person who hates Donald Trump in Israel, or it could be a crazy person on the right who hates Donald Trump in Israel. Unfortunately, you got the neo-Nazis and just like the leftists who just kind of really hate Israel and see them as the oppressor, and because they're, fighting brown people, I guess, or just whatever reasons they have to hate Israel. But then there's more kill Trump now, burn Israel, more stuff. 6 million wasn't enough. So really hating the Jews here. And apparently wrote multiple journals, and they warned people not to read them because apparently there's really bad stuff in them. And then apparently there's one of these babies that, you know, we don't have to entirely judge people on what they put online, but that doesn't seem like a right wing sort of flag there. Yeah. Gosh. And then there's for the children there. Really, 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 really sick stuff. So, New York Post reported that the mom of the shooter worked at the school where he opened fire. So, this doesn't seem like it's just a disdain for Catholics and wanting to kill kids, but obviously a personal touch there. The mother of the lone gunman who killed 2 students and injured 17 others, was an employee at the school, police say. While the motives of transgender Robin Westman, 23, remain unclear, police identified the suspect's mother as Mary Grace Westman, who spent 5 years working as a secretary at the school until she retired in 2021, according to Facebook posts and a blog on the church's website. She has provided such wonderful hospitality, friendship, and compassion to all who gathered for the last 5 years at the church. You will be missed. Congratulations on your retirement, the church wrote. So, personal touch there. She didn't work there, but he's obviously was affiliated or aware of it. So there's a piece of the story. Apparently the Minnesota Star is reporting, according to court records, Westman's mother applied to change her child's name in 2019 from Robert to Robin, because he was a minor at the time and couldn't do it, and the mother had to sign off on the change. So this isn't the first trans shooter that we had that shot up a Christian school. I mean, they shot these kids while they're in the pews at the church. This isn't the first one, and they're a really tiny segment of the population. So maybe we ought to have some more conversations. Now, people will say we have to have conversations about gun control, and then they'll say like, oh, we need background checks, and then they'll name things that background checks already do. And then there are people who say, well, we need more focus on mental health. And my thing that I keep saying, I think that's absolutely true. But the issue is that people don't want people well today. I don't think. We push people to be unwell online and politics. It's like people want folks to be crazy. You know, I talked last week about the transgender stuff, and because of Winsome Sears, that woman who had the sign, and so I was just, going on and on about it and ranting and stuff. And I wrote something. I didn't actually publish it yet, but I guess I'm going to. I said I don't want like a mentally unwell man in my bathroom. Like if trans women don't want to be, if they're afraid to go to the bathroom with other men, why can't they understand that women don't want to be in the bathroom with mentally unwell men? And if you have a problem, because people will take offense if you say that they're mentally ill. But if your selling point for why they need gender affirmation, why they need hormones, why they need surgery, and all this stuff is if you don't do it, then they will kill themselves. If that's your pitch, it seems very strange to me that you won't admit that they're mentally unstable, that they're mentally unwell. Like what? If they don't chop off their balls, they will unalive themselves. But you don't want to call them unwell. You don't want to call them mentally ill. You know? It's got to be celebrated. It's got to be uplifted. And if you don't go along with it, you have to be condemned. Now, we don't feel that as much as we felt it a couple years ago, but it wasn't too long ago that that the world was willing to boycott a state and pull the All-Star game from a state for not allowing men in women's bathrooms. What was that? Was it All-Star? Let me look it up real quick. Charlotte. Yeah, it was the NBA. I was thinking it was maybe the a baseball, but baseball was, I think, with the voting thing. NBA pulls All-Star game out of Charlotte over transgender bathroom law HB2 back in 2017. That's the world we used to live in. Where the NBA is like, oh, we can't have the All-Star game here because y'all won't let men into girls' bathrooms. Like there had to be like real world consequences, financial consequences. Because if you're pulling out something like that out of a state that's preparing for that, there's the stadiums, the food vendors, and all kinds of different stuff, restaurants that benefit from that kind of business. You just yank that over something like that. So people wanted to let you know that there would be real world consequences for not shutting up and just going along with something that isn't true. and that's what they would push all the time. So when people say, well, we need to take mental health seriously. Okay, what do you mean by that? Because I don't think a lot of these people are honest about I don't. It's something to be celebrated about. It not treat it just like we're like a like a cute fit check or something. It's weird. Or even yesterday I mentioned, I think it was yesterday, I mentioned that Keith Ellison, no, I'm sorry, it was Hakeem Jeffries was talking about the woman that Trump just fired with the Federal Reserve. And the first thing that he puts out is that, oh, she's a black woman, because he's trying to frame it as, oh, Trump's attacking another black woman. You're supposed to subconsciously like, of course he would, because he's a racist. Instead of mentioning her qualifications or that he did the wrong thing, and he's overstepping his bounds, etc., and at least list her qualifications and whatever. Just went straight with the race thing and making people so obsessed with race and racial politics. It's not healthy for our world. It's not healthy for our country. For people to feel like they are constantly the victims, or folks are constantly oppressors. Instead of looking at people as individuals and looking at them by their actions or judging them accordingly based on their actions. It's unhealthy, guys. Or even that story that I've been talking about, the Meyer story, when people are willing to boycott Myers. I saw another like viral video. Someone who had like 3 million followers on TikTok they posted the full body cam, but they wrote a caption that said like autistic teen fired or something. And all these people in the comments were so upset about it. There were some people were like, what am I missing? He stole. Like, what did Meyer do wrong? But I saw one person, they're like a dancing weatherman. I don't know where they operate out of, but I see him on TikTok dancing, you know, to different trends and other things before he reports on the weather. And he's just like, oh, Myers is disgusting. I'm like, what did Myers do? and people, there's no accountability for this young man who did this terrible thing. He did a terrible thing. There's no accountability, and people don't care about the truth. I did a post on YouTube showing my article that I wrote about it, and someone commented, and they were saying, "Oh, well, Myers was wrong because they waited 3 months to prosecute him instead of going to him immediately because they wanted to prosecute and blah blah." And they said other stuff too, but I'm like, you did. It doesn't seem like you watched the body cam, and that you didn't read the article, and you didn't even read the post that I wrote about the article. It's one thing that you don't want to click on the link and read the long article that I wrote, but you didn't even read the whole post. And it's like at the beginning of the post, I think. And then they're like, well, they could have did something. They could have just fired him. Oh, are we going to acknowledge that you were wrong? And that this information that was allegedly making you upset about Myers plotting for 3 months to get this kid isn't true? Like, can we acknowledge the thing that made you upset isn't true? What's wrong with people that they can't be wrong and admit they're wrong? And just since like doing different articles and stories and stuff about it and going back and forth with people, there's like I've got so many comments, so many attacks. Only one person admitted, oh my gosh, I was wrong. I watched a full body cam. You were right. I apologize. One person. It's crazy. People believe what they want to believe. They latch onto their feelings and they just want to feel validated. They don't want to be corrected. And we just live in a crazy world that wants to validate craziness. And also, we live in a society. I don't know about this person who the gunman here. What led him down a rabbit hole. There's a lot of people who don't like Jews because they feel like they control the world, and there's stuff like, you know, a lot of folks, unfortunately, on both sides of the aisle who, I don't know, I feel like I've seen more people on the right, like far right, kind of push that the Jews are behind everything kind of stuff. But the folks on the left are like they are the oppressors who are doing evil, terrible things. I don't know about like that all the things they're behind. I just kind of see that more on the right, but they fit into the oppressor matrix, and the Jews, they do too well. They're not brown enough or whatever, so they're the oppressors, and everyone who hates them, who has attacked them, they're not really the oppressors. Israel's the oppressors or whatever. So I don't know what rabbit holes and conspiracies, you know, holes that he fell down to get to this point. People obviously allowed him to live this lie about him being a woman that obviously isn't true. I don't know what all kinds of reasons why he hates Donald Trump so much that he wanted to kill him, which he's not alone. When Trump was like nearly killed in the assassination attempt, there was too many videos online on places like TikTok with people saying, oh no, he almost did it for us, guys. That would have been horrifying. That would have been terrible for the country, guys, to see someone who was a president who was running for president to just be shot at a rally in front of his supporters. That would have been a terrible thing. If you want him to lose, run a good candidate with some competent policies. You don't have to murder him and then cheer it on. So, but people spread so many lies. There's a lot of things I don't like about Donald Trump. There's nothing that he's done that I'd be like, yeah, he was murdered. Good. Or someone tried to kill him. I nothing. Nothing. What has he done that warrants that? Same about Biden or Obama. I don't like those. I think they've been done serious harm. To be assassinated and cheer that on? Something is wrong with you. Something is wrong with people cheering on Luigi, that guy who shot and killed the CEO, the healthcare CEO. People cheering him on. Justice for Luigi. These people are unwell. They need help. Our world is sick. I'm sorry if I'm bumming people out. we people are so involved in these politics instead of looking at their own life and trying to, as Jordan Peterson would say, clean their own room, get their own life in order. And they feel like if they can do something like this and live in infamy, then they've really achieved something, because they're cowards. And instead of putting their hands on something that they can't actually change about themselves and try to be better people themselves, they want to go out with a bang. They want to go out with a bang. It's just really sick. So people will say their gun control stuff for a while. I saw a comment that said trans should not be allowed to purchase or have access to firearms. It's a dangerous mental illness. It is a mental illness. I mean, if you're going to talk about the next kind of step in gun control, I don't know why that one, if you were on the left arguing for more gun control, why wouldn't you bring up mental illness checks, I guess? But the issue there is going to be like, okay, who gets to decide how mentally ill or competent you have to be in order to exercise your Second Amendment rights? So you have to be hospitalized and, et cetera, et cetera. But again, this is not our first trans shooter. So was that not all trans are crazy? Not all of them are there's something disordered in your mind if you believe that you are born in the wrong body. If you have, I guess, just dysphoria and you're not like kind of claiming the full trans experience, I guess that's different. Think of Blair White. I don't think Blair is dangerous and incapable of having a firearm. I'm not saying go that route. I'm saying if you're like going to argue like more gun control, that seems like kind of the more obvious kind of route to start edging in toward. I don't but Blair White will tell you that he's unwell, that he has a mental illness. He's not gonna go attack people on the streets or something. I think he'd get his butt whooped or something. But Blair will tell you that he's not well. I think, and he's paid for a lot of work. I don't know what he'd be willing to do to kind of undo that. My prayer would be that he lives in the way that God ordered him to be, and undoes the disorderedness of his life. But Blair will I don't, and Blair, I don't think always thought of himself as being unwell, but I've seen him admit that and talk about that. So there are people who have dysphoria who have learned to deal with that and just don't take it further with that conclusion, but they still have an uncomfortableness within their body. And that's tough. That's tough. Chad Felix Green actually struggled with gender dysphoria, and he talked about how you know, books like When Harry Became Sally really kind of spoke to him and helped him. And interestingly enough, Amazon like banned that book for a minute. Kit Kat said Blair White admits that the gender thing is a mental illness and that he knows he is a man, but presenting the way that he does is how he deals with the mental illness. Yeah. I think like earlier, some of the stuff Blair wouldn't say kind of that kind of stuff, but I've seen like more recent stuff where Blair's admitted that people need Jesus so much. Yes. It's there's so many things just converging with this dude. And I think a lot of these, who knows how much dysphoria this person grew up with or whatever. I don't believe that all these people who are saying that they have transgender, that they are transgender or whatever, have like genuine dysphoria. That's another issue too. I think it's really a fad for a lot of people. And I think there's people who have other sort of mental deficiencies where they're just kind of easier to prey upon with something that is just kind of viral and so that's the route that they've gone. That's why you see so many detransitioners. You have people who are like self-diagnosing themselves, going on, Reddit or other sort of social media sites, and finding all these, doing this research, and them kind of, like, oh, well, I kind of feel this way, and then they decide they're that way, and then they find other people who just kind of affirm that feeling instead of investigating it, and hopefully, someone can talk them out of that before they do irreversible damage to themselves. But I saw a video of someone on TikTok. If I could find the video fast enough, I'd pull it up for you guys. But they were just kind of giving their testimony about how, they had different psychological issues due to, I think it was just some other traumas that they had in their life that people really should have looked into and investigated, that would have explained some of his internal issues. And he started going down that rabbit hole of transgenderism stuff. And he had, I think his dad worked somewhere with a friend who was like really, really into data. And his dad's friend really, really looked into the research and was able to be like, no, like this is not going to help, and just like would not. So they wouldn't go forward with all that stuff because they got the information. And because of that, he had only like, I think, socially kind of transitioned, but didn't do any surgical kind of stuff. So some people get lucky and they get out before they get in too deep. But there's some people who mourn the loss of their body parts, like Chloe Cole. So think about just how tough it is growing up, how uncomfortable you might feel. Just feeling uncomfortable in your body is a feeling that a lot of people feel, especially going through puberty. Girls who who have their breasts grow in and they feel sexualized all of a sudden. They don't know how to deal. You know, they feel uncomfortable. You know, guys feeling insecure, girls wanting to be like their brothers, and not be feeling comfortable like the girly girl that they see, and they relate more to their male friends because they just kind of haven't bloomed yet. There was one post I read on X one time, and she was talking about how much of a tomboy that she was, and now she's such a girly person, and she's like, I just idolized my brother. Like, that's why she was into so many boyish things. But if she had grown up at a time where they had all this gender stuff really being pushed, she might have made a different decision. My sister Angelina, she was like, I'm not gonna be a girly girl. I'm not gonna be a girly girl. That's what she would say. And she was gross. She would like talk about gross things to try to kind of gross you out. And she liked baggy clothes, t-shirts and stuff. Now she still likes a baggy t-shirt and hoodies and stuff like that. But you know, she got into middle school, and you know, she started you know, dress a little cuter, started doing her makeup and other stuff like that. And she loves being a mom. Like, that's what she wanted to be. And she's married and she's got 5 kids. There's this one photo of her where she's like breastfeeding her child. There's like a cover, and her hair is like flipped, and I'm like, this is the most fabulous feminine photo. And she just looks so beautiful in some of those photos. She's really pretty. She's really pretty. And her kids are so cute. And I introduced them to Kingdom Hearts on Sunday, and we played for a while. And they're asking questions like, why is Sora floating in the air? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't think anyone knows the answers to the questions you're asking. But you know, but she didn't want to be a girly girl. So people just prey on confusion that children have growing up. And then some people, you know, they have other things on top of that. Maybe they're like autistic and other stuff, or just they have mental issues. They have some kind of trauma that's warping their worldview. And instead of dealing that, they go down that route. So I don't buy that this person was perhaps had, you know, issues of gender dysphoria their whole entire life. I don't know if that's true or not. That's usually just not the case. I don't think this influx, even it's a small percentage still of the population or whatever, but this influx of all these people who identify as trans, I don't think it's organic. I don't think it's just a product of, oh, now we can be ourselves. I think it's hip. Everyone was affirming it. It was so in just a couple of years ago. And now people are like, we kind of had enough of it. You guys took it too far. My question is, why didn't his mother notice his illness? There's always questions about that kind of stuff. Now, we had a conversation about this the other day about parents, what they do notice, what they don't notice, and sometimes how your children are crafty and expertly lie to you. So, I'm well, I was gonna say I'm not ready to blame mother, but if mother helped him become a she, miss working at a Catholic school, naughty. So, I don't know. That seems like a bad judgment call to me. But I don't know enough to say more. The Uvalde story, the more stuff that came out about that person who shot up that school, that was a menace. There's sometimes you hear these stories and you're like, why didn't the FBI do more? Why didn't the schools do more? Why didn't the community do more? Like, there were all kinds of signs. I don't know if I think there's signs that this person wasn't well, but I don't know about obvious stories or whatever that people could tell. Like if the flags were as red as they were with the Uvalde shooter. But there's a lot of unwell people who cling on to politics and they get really involved in this stuff and they go down the conspiracy holes or whatever and they get really active and unfortunately they get to this kind of place. You know? There's people who are taking politics too seriously and it's making them unwell, and there are people who are unwell who like to cling on to politics. So anyway, as let me see if there's any kind of other breaking information that I can see that I might want to let you guys know before I let you go. Oh my gosh. There's a Candace Owens tweet that is troubling. The government is behind this. Each shooting is more traumatizing than the last because the goal is to scare us into compliance. Compliance of what exactly, Candace? It is the tried and true strategy of 9/11 and the Manson murders, both CIA operations. Do not ever agree to hand over your Second Amendment rights. It doesn't just kind of make more sense to you that the crazy trans person went to go shoot up the school where his mom used to work at? It just makes more sense to you, Candace, that the government was behind this? Like the Republican administration was behind this? Okay. Speaking of people who are unwell, speaking of people who are unwell, I don't have the time to go down a Candace Owens rabbit hole. That is I wouldn't be terribly surprised if this person was a recent Candace fan. I don't know, but she's been a part of the anti-Jewish train as of late, very hard, very, very hard, saying some crazy, not just anti-Israel, we're criticizing the nation of Israel, but blood libels, revisiting World War II and other things like that. It's this guy AG Hamilton, who I follow. He does he reports a lot about misinformation, but he says a lot of things about Candace here or there. And he has a list of her different conspiracies. So if you're interested in that, I recommend you follow him and read the list if you want to know how nutty she's been for a minute. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me. It's so unfortunate to hear this kind of news. Again, kids just going back to school. And definitely not the news you want to hear ever, but it's just tragic. I believe in thoughts and prayers. People say thoughts and prayers. The thoughts is just like my condolences. I'm thinking about you. You're on my heart. Prayers is, I'm praying with you in this time of need. I'm praying for your strength. I'm praying for your comfort. I'm praying for your peace. you know. And families, they need that in times of tragedy and loss, especially sudden loss, guys. Don't dismiss that. So I encourage you all to pray for these families and pray for our nation. I don't know how long the story will be in the news because it doesn't sound like this is the type of shooter that they want to talk about too much, but we do need some solutions to try to make life safer for Americans, and that does include addressing mental health. But again, we got to get real about what we mean, and trying to be we need to stop selling people on so many lies for gain, because some of these lies are just so inflammatory and they push people to really dark spaces. So maybe we'll have to talk about that more later. Anyway, thank you guys. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow.